And just to check with my staff here, everybody's recording. We're good to go.
We are now live. We're going out there and
we're now live on all sorts of channels with all sorts of truthers, and hopefully with you, the audience. And for everybody tuning in, welcome to Late Night Kevin on conspiracy theory type stuff. 100% false information is debunked by independent fact checkers. This is for entertainment purposes only, because we all know that our governments would never do the things over 1 billion people worldwide are accusing them of. So how this is going to work, this is a new show. And for everybody watching Robert's channel and Scott's channel and Joe's channel, they've let me hijack their show. So this is called Kevin On. So I'm Kevin Hoyt. I self-identify as the governor of Vermont State. We're going to pick some hot topics. I get to be the host. So I'm going to pick the topics, and then our lovely panelists, who consist of co-hosts, Robert with Renegade Media. And Robert, just tell us, where are you streaming from tonight? Where's the show going live?
Well, we're live right now on Rumble, and we're live on Cloud Hub tonight. And then we are also live on Telegram on the Renegade Media channel there as well.
Excellent. So anybody who hasn't checked that out, please do. And all of these live feeds, I'm going to keep my co-hosts busy. If you have questions, we're looking for audience participation, and we want to engage the audience. So on any of these hot topics, if you put your questions in great big bold capital letters, we'll keep these guys on their toes, and hopefully we can get a few of those in. We got a lot of speakers and a lot of important things to go over. So forgive us if we don't give a lot of those in, but that's the idea behind this. So Joe is the other one, Joe Rosati of Reflection Pool. And again, his partner in crime here, Scott Stone, right? That's TruthStream podcast. Where are you guys streaming from tonight? Hi, how you doing, by the way?
Washington State. Washington State. Yes, indeed.
Washington State. And you guys are recording this? Are we going live on your stations? Or
yes, we're a little bit of both. We're already recording. And then I think most of the questions are going to go to Robert, because I believe he's the one that can read the lives. Is that correct, Robert?
Yeah, if we end up with any questions on there, I can pull them up.
Okay. So that's Renegade Media for everybody that's watching. And again, this is the basic four. It's going to be us every week. And what we're going to do is pick a hot topic. Like I said, you guys get to hear my views, and then the three musketeers over here are going to weigh in. And then we're going to bring in two specialized guests. And tonight we have very special guests. We have, I don't even have to look. I got notes. I don't know why I got notes. Winifred, right? Winifred Adams with Making Life Brighter, and Brad Wozny, of course, with The Sovereign Soul, right? Two friends joined us on the Truth Tour. We have a whole bunch of truthers here today. And the hot topic of discussion tonight is Juan O Savin, right? I took a little heat the other day, last week, because of some stuff with Juan O Savin. And again, we want to look at the good, the bad, the ugly. Who is Juan? What do we know? What's our conclusion? And before I even start, I want to say this is not friendly fire. I'm going to start by saying I believe Juan O Savin is a good guy, okay? But I'm also going to play devil's advocate, because I know I got a bunch of Juan O Savin fans in here, right? So I'm going to read what I've heard from the people. This is what the people are talking about. So I want to represent the people, and we're going to talk about everything and discuss this. So I want to start right off the bat, I guess, with the bad things, right? The bad things that I see. And, you know, when I said the good, the bad, and the ugly, I actually got comments from viewers. Well, there's no bad or ugly. He's 100% patriot. And I'll tell you, if you're 100% on anybody, that's a dangerous position to be in. We should be watching everybody and questioning everybody, including us, all the knuckleheads you're watching here on tonight. So I'm going to go over a couple things that I see, red flags, and we can discuss them individually. Right off the bat, I see Juan on a pedestal, and that bothers me. I don't want a pedestal. I know a lot of us we're not looking for popularity. This is, we sell the truth for free, right? But Juan always has, it seems like there's a high dollar thing. There's a lot of charge going on, instant respect. He commands that, right? And again, for a good reason. But what do you guys think right off the top with pedestals? And again, the situation I'm talking about. Winifred, you spent hours and hours with Juan O Savin.
Yeah, I did. I had the
and I don't want you to defend him yet. We're talking about the bad things, but again, we're talking about putting him on a pedestal and the charge. What are your thoughts?
I was really curious. I was definitely on the fence. I still have questions. I do have some very pointed questions. I want to not know why Kim Gugan or whoever she is thinks he's such a bad guy. That's what I want to know. And everybody talks about her, but I've had some interesting backdoor closure, I guess I could say, on things about her. And there's this big fight over who has the Rodriguez trust in the world and all this other stuff, and who's going to be putting what systems on par next, and where does all that monetary value come from. And so those are my questions, like what are we working in here, who's who, what are we doing? And I had the pleasure of being able to sort of sit in while my friend was waiting to get her book signed, and it turned into a private closure meeting, and you could ask your questions. And he spent 5 hours sitting there signing books and answering questions. And that's just insane. Actually, more than that. I went to bed at 3 a.m. Everybody else still stayed there till 5. So one thing that did come out of that for me, which was really interesting, is somebody was alluding to, what's Juan think about Russell J. Gould? And Juan said, there's not enough time for a new system. And that begs a question to me. What if that system's already in play, just no one's recognizing it? At the same time, I get what he's saying and why he's saying that based on the current narrative of what's about to play out that he's talking about, and that what most truthers are talking about today. So it's kind of a curious, which way do we go with that? But he has a lot of knowledge about rocket science. He has a lot of knowledge clearly about what's going on in the military and their estimations of our future. So one thing I've been studying is that I've been looking at his hands a lot, looking at his ring, and we talked about his sapphire and the famous ring in the book and everything. But everybody says he's somebody, but he's got all these prosthetics on. Well, if you look at his neck, I mean, his neck and his fingers kind of speak to one another. He has a big neck, unless he's got a giant suit on, and his fingers are the same. They match that neck in a sense, I think.
We're going to get to that too. I don't want to interrupt you, but we got a lot of things we're going to go through. And again, as far as the charge associated with Juan O Savin, again, it costs money to have brunch with Juan, or it costs money for those books, or it costs money to get these autographed for most people. Again, we have some, behind the scenes.
He says he gives it to the veterans, though. He said he gave the money to the veterans, and the books were used for the veterans.
That's what I want to look for. And again, it's not cheap to do what Juan does either. So that's the answers that I'm looking for. Let's talk about jet setting, right? Again, we see him flying all over. He's everywhere at the same time, back and forth on these expensive jets, driving fancy cars. Them cowboy boots aren't cheap. He's got a nice hat like I do, right? These aren't cheap. So there's a lot of, again, there's somebody funding Juan O Savin. I don't think it's on his own bill. My guess is, it's on the taxpayer's bill, because I think he's part of the government. But what say you, Scott? Let's pick on Scott Stone. What do you think about the money involved, again, the jet setting? What's your opinion of Juan?
Well, I'd like to know how you got to Florida, because I assumed it would be maybe on one of those jets, but
he didn't offer a private jet. That came out of these are things we do, I guess on a wing and a prayer. I spent the last little bit of money that I had. I did not get a private ride from Juan on his jet. And I went down there with no contacts, not knowing what I was getting into. And again, per his recommendation, and we're going to talk about that when we get to the good side of Juan O Savin, because it was great for me and I think America. But yeah, that was on my own bill. Juan didn't pay.
Well, hey, if we're paying for private jets as taxpayers, that's better than paying for shrimp on treadmills or the rate of ketchup flow. I'd say if it's going to a good cause, and I think it probably is with Juan. But yeah.
Right. So the fancy lifestyle doesn't bother you. I'm assuming he probably earned that privilege.
I don't.
Right?
Yeah, I don't think we're paying for all of that. I think that's something you earn over a career that we have no information about just yet. But I don't.
I know you guys like me, and I'm guessing Juan is the same. We got everything we got vested into this. And Brad, we're going to pull you into this conversation because just like me, again, we don't have a bank account. It's funny. I got a give, send, go. it's got like 18 grand in it. And people, wow, that's a lot of money, Kevin. Well, I just went to Anaheim and Boston, and I was down in Florida, and I'm in 8 courses, and they destroyed 2 vehicles, and I can't live in my home. So I put $70 worth of gas every day into my truck. If you think 18 grand covered the last year, like, you guys are foolish. And Brad, you're in the situation. This is literally a wing and a prayer for you too, right? What do you think of Juan's expensive lifestyle and how it relates?
First of all, it doesn't bother me because, and I'm going to share some points, because number one, if somebody's brought up affluent, or they've earned that, we understand there's an options trading background, they've earned that. If he's driving a Bugatti down in Florida where he lives, but then we see him when he's driving up to Georgia for the election fraud in a rental Toyota Camry. So I feel that wherever he is, if he has his own stuff, why not? Well, you'd probably take, not a Bugatti, excuse me, it was whatever that other nice car is that he has, a Bentley. You take a Bentley over a Toyota Camry any day if you had those finances personally. So I feel from intuitively and looking into it, wherever he can on his own, he does on his own, but wherever it's necessary, like that example in Georgia, there's been several of them, by the way, where he jumps in the car and it's either a nice one or it may be a rental, like a Camry. And I'm not knocking people who have Camrys, but again, designer stuff. So it doesn't bother me when you're sitting there and you have an opportunity to do this. And let's just look at President Donald Trump. I hear that President Trump, being a Canadian, right? And by the way, thank you everybody for tuning in and watching this. This is amazing that you're all here. So I just want to say it's an honor for me to be invited and to have gotten to know each one of these people at a personal level in the flesh. And so I'm honored to be here. But look at President Donald Trump. If he was president, right? And he didn't take a salary, that's what I've heard. Yet he's flying around the Trump plane. And then he's got new Trump Force One. So, but yet you see all these things that he is doing that very, very much appear, and absolutely I feel, are benevolent. So if you have that opportunity, why don't you bring that in? And I do feel sometimes though, if you're going to jump on it and you see it's a 2-hour, with Michael Jaco, with Juan, he might go on for 25 minutes about the engine and the amazing cult classic. But here's the thing, right? Everybody has their passion. Deer hunting is your passion, and you express that hunting is, and you express that with the world with your show, with veterans, wounded veterans, and children, and being a conservationist. So that's your passion. So perhaps his passion just kind of borders in, because at the pace we saw and witnessed, which Winifred just said, he went all night with Gina. 5 hours, Winifred, you saw him. He went all night, and Gina in the room while he's signing books for people that had ordered in Tampa that he wasn't able to with his traveling. Because there was one time in Tampa on the Truth Story, he said, I've flown 7,000 miles in the last 48 hours. Maybe it was a day. And he's doing all this. And he said, anybody who ordered, I will give you a personal phone call. We'll set it up. I'll still sign your book. So he's still true to that. I do feel, though, that to be cognizant, if he's on this mission of benevolence, which again, I feel is true, he is, but take what resonates, that maybe dial back that, because the majority of the people that you're reaching don't have that, may have never tasted that lifestyle in a few of their lifetimes and incarnations. And so that I can absolutely see both visually and auditorily, acoustically, is off-putting. When a guy's driving around and then he's having steak and shrimp and whatnot, maybe there's something to be mindful of there. I feel like I'm doing an ESPN play-by-play after everything's happened. Here's what I would do. No. But bottom line, everything I feel, though, is with benevolent, loving intent. That it just has the personality mix that comes into it. And we're all human anyway.
Well, so I do the same thing. I mean, if I had a Ferrari, I would drive a Ferrari instead of my new used truck. That's just the way it is. In fact, I did drive a Lambo one weekend in Croatia, but it was like a 25-year-old tractor. That company started making tractors. You probably didn't know that. Yeah. But yeah, I feel the same way. I think if he's got it, you may as well use it. And I don't see any problem with that. But again, these are other things I'm hearing from people. And the last thing I want Juan or anybody to think this is another friendly fire patriot attack. We're simply talking about somebody. Again, when we heard stuff about Charlie Ward, people looked into it, right? When you hear stuff about Kevin Hoyt or Winifred or Brad, we should look into this stuff. I think it's good and healthy to question everybody, even people on our own team sometimes. And I'm going to agree that I think Juan is on our team.
Just coming after you. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about Intel too, though, because this is another deciding thing. Juan has given us some great intel, remarkable intel, over the course of years now, right? But he's also given us some bad intel. I just took some heat recently. You guys were all there at that Anaheim conference.
Yeah.
And we were told, again, we thought Donald Trump was going to be arrested last Wednesday. And because of the factors, I had to weigh that. And I thought it was worth the risk. I put that out there, and it didn't happen. Right now, what did happen is I saw a little bit of backstepping by Juan O Savin. I saw him. He did a show with David, Nino Rodriguez. And he said, they should have listened. I found out Thursday or Wednesday morning what happened. All the paperwork was signed up, so that would take effect. But in fact, he told us on Monday. So it was before then, right? And I think there's a whole bunch of contingency plans here and plays. That's one of them. In that interview with Nino, he goes on and talks about, this is a giant chess game. And this is something I want to allude to, because sometimes you have to sacrifice a pawn to take a queen, right? And maybe I was the pawn, and I'm okay if that's the case. And I think it is in a way, right? But at the same time, that chess game ends, we remove all the kings and queens, so we only have one king left. And I know who Juan has in mind. I love the man and the presidency myself, but I don't want any more kings. And that is a scary scenario for me. So what do you think, Winifred? Let's pick on you again. What do you think of that scenario?
Thanks a lot, Kevin. No,
You're
really, hats off to you for being brave enough to put out there on a platter very clearly what you feel and think, and inviting people not to be, a sheep and a follower, but rather to think for themselves and weigh everything. I think that's very important right now. And begging the question is also very important. We're not supposed to have a king. I mean, the whole point of everything that we've done since the time we landed here was that we wouldn't have a monarchy, and really we wouldn't even have a hierarchy. But to be honest, we've never had a democracy either. So in this case, we have some making up to do, if you will, and people need to decide and reach deep as to what that would look like and how that would play out in a scenario upcoming. One was very patient. Something that I can add to your intel about that was that, he was very much on that thread that you were talking about. So you really shouldn't take the heat for that, because he was vested in that very heavily. He was very serious about it. Whatever he'd been told was probably very clear to him from the generals he speaks to, that that's the case and that was coming. What's a psyops, what's not, how do they play their games? We don't know. But he did, after all night long, get up the next day, then give a private closure to you guys. And, you took the heat because you took some things public, supposedly, or put out there. But I heard him say this needs to go out there. Just so you know, I'm just saying that was supposed to go out there. And then privately, I got to spend time with him again later that day. And he took time to explain all the pages in his book, including M equals, what's the Einstein formula? M equals MC squared. E equals MC squared. He explained every one of those. He is very patient, very even. I mean, I would be so tired by the time I did what he did, but he is very even. And this is something I keep mulling over and observing about him. He's one of those rare people like that just can go all day, all night, all day, all night, and he never changes. He's not excited by things. He's not moved by stuff. He's very clear. He's very precise, and he's very direct. So whatever he's vested in.
Yeah, we gotta talk to the knowledge this guy has is immense. You can pretty much pick your subject, and Juan O Savin can fill you in, whether we're talking ancient history to aliens to what's happening in the geopolitical world. One thing I'm going to add is, again, some of the intel that we were receiving from Juan O Savin. Again, one of the big things, and again, I think these are scenarios that he's lining up for the public to plant seeds, but it was, we're going to remove President Corn Pop for mental incapacity, right? And we know Kamala's not fit, or She's not in a position, she's not qualified to be president of the United States. Therefore, Nancy Pelosi would be the president. And I shared that intel as well, even though in my own beliefs, and I'm going to repeat this again, I think all three of the people in those scenarios have already been removed. Okay. So a lot of people accuse me again of sharing misinformation, but I don't think it was misinformation. I think it's past information, right? I think this is, and again, we're going to get to the conclusion in a minute, but I think this is the Q Public Relations Department. It makes sense to me. This is the largest joint military civilian operation in the world. They need to disclose some of this stuff to the public. So the things that we're talking about are giant, right? And we even touched on some of the crazy stuff today, but they're giant issues. And how do you disclose this to the world? So my opinion of Juan O Savin right off the top is he's here for disclosure, but it's not for our groups. Our groups, that's why I'm getting so much heat from the truthers, because they're ahead of this disclosure. I think the Juan O Savin disclosure is for the sleepers. It's for the people who still think that's President Corn Pop on TV. What do you guys feel about that? Joe, let's hear from you. What's your opinion on all that?
Well, I agree with you. I do think that we're watching a movie. In fact, we talked about that today with Mark Atwood, that if you look at there's a producer, and Steve Mnuchin, I believe is how you pronounce his name, but he hasn't produced a film since 2017. And he was also, I think, I don't know if he was affiliated with the Treasury as well. And if you look, if you look at his IMDb, there's no production credits for the last 5 years. And you just look at all these actors and these players and people affiliated with what's going on. And I think we are literally watching something, like the Biden that fell on his bike. If you look at his legs, I mean, that guy's legs look like he was 40 years old. So there's just those little things that you have to look at that, if it helps you start putting the pieces together. So that's what I think in a nutshell. And I think as far as Juan's affluence, I think people that have the intel that Juan has, I mean, Scott, for example, he grew up in an affluent family, and he was privy to certain conversations and information at a young age that, someone may not be privy to if they weren't brought up around certain, people and things like that. So I think it adds a lot of credibility to what he's doing. And I think it's amazing. I mean, his book, The Kid by the Side of the Road, there's things in there that I was reading and they're mind blowing. So he might be a little much for certain people, but I don't mind it at all. I think sometimes though, if you're looking for like a direct answer, it's a little challenging, because that's part of his job, is to add stories through history that apply to what's currently going on, and maybe not to give direct answers, because things have to unfold how they need to unfold. So
I love it. That was a great response. Absolutely great response, Yellen. And I agree. I think the intel that he gives us is, again, to take that common collective mindset and steer it in a certain direction, whether it's seeds to get people talking and thinking about these things. Now, again, I'm going to back up though, because my problem with that is that's what our government's done. And I prefer transparency. I like transparency. We're going to talk about the mask issue next. Actually, before we go into the mask, because you brought up the book, Kid by the Side of the Road, again, exceptional book. People should buy it and read it. But Brad, holding up his copy down there, you got a special book. I didn't know this, Brad. I went back through mine. I just got all autographs, but why don't you share with the audience what you have in your exclusive Kid by the Side of the Road book?
Thank you. And by the way, this just all happened by honor and virtue of having ordered this last year and bringing it to Truth Tour. What I'm also about to share with you, nobody's heard yet, is I just finished a 3-hour Zoom with the former colonel of Delta Force, with a real life James Bond from Britain, and with another former U.S. Army major who ran counterterrorism operations and special forces. So as you were all doing your introductions, I apologize if it looked like I was distracted, because things were finally coming through based on the Zoom we just recorded. That will be published tomorrow. What you're about to hear here is some stuff I've already shared from this book. And then I think that you're going to enjoy what Juan has signaled, because with the tier 1 elite officers, veterans that just deciphered something that none of us picked up at the Truther conference from what I'm about to show. So talk about the best movie teaser, the show, right? Grab popcorn, as he always says. This is literally, quote unquote, if you want to call it hot off the presses, but here in this book, and I'll go to the page in this edition is 52. On this picture, and in the recording, I'll send a screenshot of it just because it all blurs out when it comes to me with the lighting. But on page 52, he wrote Law of War Manual and underlined it beside the Q. It's reverse here. And then there were a whole bunch of numbers that he wrote in the middle. Now let's get back to the Q. Okay, and I shared this on the show Joe and Scott and I did on the weekend with you and I when we did it yesterday, Kevin. So what you see here is 11.3, 11.4, 11.5, 11.6, 11.07, 11.11, then 11.18, 11.18. So when you hear 11.3, what Juan told us in that briefing, he took a picture of President Trump's recent rally, so 2 weeks ago Saturday. And he said, look how many flags you see on the podium. There was 11 on one side of the podium and 3 on the other. And so it starts with 11.3, 11.4, 11.5. And that's written on the other side of Law of War Manual. And I've been on multiple shows, even my own, sharing this stuff. We've all been thinking these might be dates, right? November 3rd?
Yeah, there's two. I mean, I've heard both theories. Again, I've seen the dates, but you're talking about the military code.
Right. So we just wrapped up.
That was reported out.
And going through this with these amazing veterans, was on this page, he wrote Law of War Manual. Now, if you go to 11.3 in the Law of War Manual, which I just received as we were texting and brought it up, would you all like me to read what 11.3 is of the Department of Defense Law of War Manual as recent as of June 2015?
Please.
Please.
11.3, end of occupation and duration of GC obligations. The next paragraph reads, the status of belligerent occupation ends when the conditions for its application are no longer met. Certain GC obligations with respect to occupied territory continue for the duration of the occupation after the general close of military operations. That is 11.3 of the Law of War Manual for the U.S. Department of Defense.
Wow.
And here are the numbers he wrote in here. And I'll send a more proper screenshot so it can be added to the edit. Actually,
I think it's been talked about before, and now it's back in the public.
Oh, we just lost Kevin.
You might be losing him. Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course we did.
Oh, hey, everybody.
How about that, right?
Yeah. Well, it makes me wonder about the other numbers on.
Yeah.
on
So
page.
Brad, yeah, what does that mean to you? Like if you went through the manual and 11.4 and the rest, are those the same? I mean, as you go through it, are those other markers?
Yeah. Oh, Kevin's back. Yes, they are other markers. I have the manual up here.
Perfect. Okay. Welcome back, Kevin, or welcome back, Cotter.
Do you want to move through those, or do you have a pace that you have in mind?
Well, it's you guys co-hosting with Kevin, I believe, and Winifred and I are the.
Well, I sure is. It's rather poignant at the moment.
Kevin, first, welcome back. Can we hear you okay?
I don't know. I think so. That was really weird. This just happened to Brad the other night too.
Yeah.
It's a coincidence. My Facebook got taken down today, right? All these things are happening. And Brad, when we got disconnected yesterday, you actually could see your cursor moving around and somebody else was in your computer, right? Apparently, they do not want people to have these discussions. Who's they? Not us, right? We're going to talk about this stuff. So, we apologize. Hopefully this will still be streaming. I don't know how you guys, good luck with editing. I'm glad I'm the host, but don't have to do all the crap you guys deal with. You know, let's talk again more about Juan and the fact that, you know, we have Juan in 2 at least, and I don't know if I should even be talking about this, but I've noticed, I think we're dealing with a couple different people. We definitely know there's masks involved. Again, this is high level clearance, right? There's needs for this. One of the problems that I had when Juan O Savin first hit the scene, he had a lot of security. I'm not seeing that anymore. It's the people that I'm meeting with, and I've met with Juan O Savin in Boston and Anaheim and in Orlando, and all 3 times it was the same guy. It's the same guy that I see with Nino Rodriguez, but I think there's other guys out there again. And again, my interpretation, and this is Q Public Relation Department. But what do you guys think of that in general? Why are we wearing masks? You think it's, again, something that's okay for security? Do you think this is JFK Jr.? These are some of the rumors we've heard in the past. I don't know. It's going to be my answer. But Winifred, you think this is JFK Jr.? What do you think of the 2 and the masks?
You're killing me. Okay, well, first of all, I'm not sure that it's JFK Jr. Based on what I think I've seen of JFK Jr. Along the way previously, it doesn't look like the same body type to me. The eyes are very blue, though, really blue and very intense and very direct. And the width of his eyes could speak to that to some degree. And, you know, I notice all those different things, but basically it energetically, you know, the information is there, but I think this person is more of a rocket scientist. This person has some kind of intel that goes to outer space and back that's more in depth. And you know, today was the launch of the new George magazine, by the way.
They got it out.
And yeah, Scott McKay, Patriot Street Fighters, featured on it with a picture of Trump as George. I think it's George Washington on there. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's somebody else. But I think it's definitely Trump on there. I think it looks like, you know, the Patriot thing with the light in the old days. And I thought that was very appropriate timing, right? And so I know Juan's been very busy leading up to this, and it's had me curious. But I have a hard time. I'm okay if I'm wrong in the end, but I have a hard time feeling that it's really JFK Jr. I feel like it's someone else. And JFK Jr. might be more stepped back or in the background. So if there's different people, it could be switched out here and there, you know. That's how I feel.
Yeah, I think so too. And again, we just got done disclosing. I've seen more than one, and I think this is a public relations division, if you will, to leak this necessary intel about disclosure to the people. So they need a team to do this, to talk to the truthers or influencers. It's another key word that Juan used in our conversation. He didn't call us truthers, he called us influencers, which again, my immediate connection was to Hollywood. Now we've become Hollywood. We are the influencers. And the first thing that's very important, everybody should know, we don't know. None of us know on this show. We're giving you our best educated guesses, and it's based on experience and personal opinion, because we got a lot of cool friends like Brad Wozny. Let's talk about your F-16 flyover. That was pretty impressive. Not everybody can do that. Let's give Juan a little bit of credibility. Tell us about what happened on the Truth Tour while you were speaking. Looks like he's picking on you, my friend.
Well, that's the most honorable interruption I've had in my life. And first of all, I would just like to address the term influencer and truther. However the taglines go, anybody who's out there just sharing a benevolent experience and sharing a benevolent insights, you know, with power comes great responsibility. We've seen this, hopefully it's still being taught in the classrooms now, this quote. And I'm not saying any of us have, you know, power or dominion over anybody. That's the whole point about being a sovereign soul. Like, God created us, right? And expressing your sovereignty, your unique expression. So if there's anybody out there who knows they have influence over people and they're not being benevolent, watch out. Really watch out. Especially you see the show that we recorded 3 hours is going to drop tomorrow. You have it from the highest levels of former tier 1 operators. at the highest levels. Watch out. So Hugh has also said that, Shooter has also said that. We're hearing it from these fine gentlemen warriors who I was just interviewing. Incredible, benevolent, and they're working still after their 3.5 decades each roughly experience at tier 1 levels in the American and the British military. So to your point about the F-16s, I actually shared this with them because now we're getting real military background. So anybody did watch Cheyenne, Wyoming, Truth Tour, that was when I went to speak. And what Kevin is doing from this lead in is the first speaker had went up and Lewis Herms is on my right and Gina Fristak is on my left, right? And she's an amazing lead support team for the Truth Tour. And then they're, just kind of texting and chatting behind my back while the speaker's up presenting. There's a lot of, not lots of commotion, but there's more than the usual. And then I'm like, Lewis, what's going on? And he's like, Juan wants to know where we are. And he goes out, takes a phone call, comes back. He said, that was Juan. He said, be ready for a big surprise in an hour. He wanted the address of the Kiwanis Community Center. Fact check, go ahead, look this up, Google Earth, whatever. Kiwanis Community Center in Cheyenne, Wyoming is right beside I-25, which runs north and south, the main corridor, right? Connects Wyoming to Colorado, north to south, across the I-80 east-west, which runs across the country of the United States. Right beside the Kiwanis Community Center as well, maybe 350 yards away tops, is a commercial airport. So the lead into this story is that important for you to understand that we're also in a residential area. If anybody's been in aviation, I was enrolled Canadian Air Cadets. One of my 2 dreams was fly F-18s because of Top Gun. The other one was be a filmmaker writer. So anybody in aviation can understand any military aircraft have a hard deck, just like you saw in Top Gun, 5,000 feet minimum in the United States. This has been confirmed by people just in the last 2 weeks. So a few speakers go, I go up 7-8 minutes in, all of a sudden, right? The windows shake like Top Gun in the tower that you saw, like windows shake, the air boss spills his coffee. Boom, we look out, tailpipe, an F-16 had just overshot the Kiwanis Community Center. We're all there. This is all still on video, folks. You can go find it. And a couple 30 seconds later, boom, another one. We all go outside, roughly 8 F-16s, a minute apart, 150 feet off the ground, full on recording. Derek Johnson standing up there holding his app. And if you don't know, Derek Johnson's showing you, hey, military aviation all around the country, these guys are dark. Just like the reports yesterday of all military aviation in the United States turned off their transponders. Interesting report, if that's true, right? So Derek's saying you can't see these guys. Wham, whoom, whoom. Mark Atwood's there too, talking about it as a former Royal Air Force pilot. And then we had that go on for 15 minutes in our show, C-130 Hercs going over, doing the same thing, waggling the winds with a commercial airport shut down in a residential area. So
not your average person can do that.
Allow that,
Right.
And the answer to that is in the United States that the only entity that can do this is National Command Authority. So folks, do your research, jump online if you're watching this live. Who is National Command Authority and who is in charge of National Command Authority? And these are from multiple people who don't know each other, who can verify this. Go to anybody in commercial aviation too, and go look at those videos. So that all happened. So I think, Kevin, it was just a really wonderful experience for people to feel that this is real, that there's a good guys and gals are in this movement worldwide, mostly have been operating in the shadows, and I believe they're about to come out. And if these comms are right, like in the book that we just read from the Law of War Manual 11.3, when your video went off, my good man, because they're attacking us in all levels, then yeah, it could very well be martial law worldwide very shortly. It was just mentioned today in Brazil because of the fraudulent elections, and the military is doing that. So you're already seeing one of the largest populations and countries in the world, population-wise country for its landmass, Brazil, is about to declare martial law. The military's already said they're stepping in.
Right. We've heard rumors actually coming out of Australia and other places where they're prepping for the EBS. And again, I think your typical everyday average deer hunter can tell something's going on. It's not quite right out there. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure this stuff out. And I want to call on Robert because he's hiding here in the background. One of my fans that called in had asked me about the Mystic 12. And I don't know how many truthers even know about this, but the Mystic 12 basically operates above the president of the United States. And they were asking, could Juan possibly be part of the Mystic 12? And Robert, I haven't seen your face on here, so we're going to call on you. That's why I kept on forgetting you. But I'd like to know your opinion on the Mystic 12 and then any other, maybe some questions from our audience if you have any.
You know, I haven't heard anything
Majestic
about
or
Mystic
Mystic?
12 yet.
Is it Majestic or the Mystic 12?
Majestic.
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 Yeah, I haven't heard that one.
Right. Okay.
That's new to me.
All right. Well, that's an easy answer. That makes it quick. And again, I only know enough to get myself into trouble. If
Yeah.
everybody watching, this is your own intuition. You have to use your own judgment. It's called critical thinking. You hear this information and then you make your own conclusion instead of letting the government decide for you. I'm a deer hunter from Vermont. Don't listen to me either. Fact check me. Look at this stuff up, right? I'm going to give you the links and the reasons and how I got to my conclusion. But then you get to decide. As long as you have all the information, I'm good with that. But so you never heard of the Majestic 12. Again, that's allegedly a group of 12 that's above the president. Again, we're talking globalists and the world powers and all those secret taboo conversations we're not supposed to have. Did you have any questions at all?
You know, I wanted to chime in here a little bit because I do get asked a lot. You know, I met Juan, I've seen him face to face, had great one-on-one conversations, and people will ask me, they say, well, who do you think he is? And my answer is always the same. I don't care. Straight, I don't care. What I look at is this guy's a patriot. He's doing whatever he has to do. And you can think about if he is in disguise, if he is undercover, if he is, how do you go through life like that? That's got to be very, very difficult, right? So from my perspective, he's doing a favor to the United States. He's in service to all of us. So I don't really care about unmasking any of that. I just, you know, take it for what it is and take the information in and share it when it's appropriate and, you know, watch it unfold as it unfolds. But he's been, you know, from my perspective, he's given us a lot of great stuff over the years.
That is a perfect answer. And I got to tell you, Robert, you've fast become one of my favorite truthers. The intel you've given me on a personal level when we talk about is absolutely incredible. That's part of the idea here. A lot of people on your show probably never heard of me, and the people that know Scott, right, they never heard of Winifred. So the idea here is to get this joint thing out and to let people see exactly how we go through this. We don't know either. So we ask questions and we bounce it off each other. Sometimes we don't agree, right? And that's okay. It's done in a civil manner. And that's how we work it out. And again, come to your own conclusions, right? Exactly. So I don't know if the Mystic 12 even exists. These are conversations that the people are having. So we're going to have them also. So does anybody, my personal experience with Juan O Savin has been fantastic. Even though I took the heat, I don't mind. But Trump is the guy that said, I'll take these arrows, right? In fact, I know when they're shooting at me, that's very, very good. That means we're not only over the target, but we're landing a few, right? These guys are on the ropes. They're in retreat. They really have to conserve their ammo. So if they're aiming at you, you should be proud of that, right? Because you're important enough. We're not only over the target, we're landing them, like I said, which is fantastic. Juan asked me to go to Orlando, right? And I want to talk about that because that worked out in a big way. I got in touch with some real media this time, still waiting on a couple of them to get back. Media Periscope, these bigger guys. Even more important for me, we always talk about these things, these scandals, these complaints, these problems. Voting is one of them. I met a woman down there named Megan, and Megan runs Redo Vote, I think is the name of it. And I should have had this written down, but basically this is the new voting machines. These are the things, blockchain, they're electronic, but they're, you know, you can't hack them. It's blockchain. So if one mistake happens, you can see it through the whole chain. Voter ID is required. She's still doing the beta testing. I think it's been accepted from 9 different governors so far. If I have my way, Vermont's going to be the 10th because the machines are half of the problem. But that led my interaction with Juan. Again, if I didn't meet him in Boston is why I had to go to Anaheim. Didn't have money to go to Anaheim, but I went. And then in Anaheim, I was told I had to go to Orlando, and I did on a wing and a prayer, and it worked out. Again, new technologies. I had dinner with a couple of the candidates for Secretary of State from New Mexico, from Arizona. I'm rubbing elbows with some very big people, and it's involving the future, where we're going, not just the corruption and all the problems that we're disclosing, but where we're going and how to get out of this. So in my opinion, and this is our conclusion, right? Our conclusion portion is, I think Juan is a good guy. I do think he's very connected, very powerful, and he's given you Q level clearance. And even if it's not quite the news, I think it's the news that's happened, as in past tense, and it's slow disclosure to the sleepers. Anybody agree, disagree? What do you want to add? We'll start with Brad.
Just double checking it. It's redovoting.com for Megan.
There you go. Thank you. Thank you.
Megan Clementi, Director of Communications at redovoting.com. Yeah.
That's right. And you're going to see Megan again. We have her, I think Thursday we're lined up, right? I want to go the gamut with her too, because I think she's an incredible woman with a great product, and America needs to know where we're going to go. So what's your conclusion, Brad? You think Juan is a white hat, a dark hat? Are we being played? Are we the psyop? Where do you stand?
My conclusion, 100%. He's on the side of light for humanity.
All right, 100%. That's pretty easy. Robert, you may as well come right back in here, buddy. You've been quiet, but what if you have anything to add, now is the time to add it. And what's your conclusion on Juan O Savin?
You know, I'm with Brad on this one. I really think he's on the light side, and he's there to help us. And you know, the idea that we judge people by the accuracy of their information is sort of interesting, because we can go and we can look at what's going on as a chessboard that's static, that's laying on a solid table, but that's not the way it is out there, right? There's all kinds of interference and interruptions. It's a little bit like trying to play chess on a cruise ship in the middle of a storm, and your pieces are getting knocked over, and there's water and there's fog, and you don't know where the other guy's going to move. And I think really that's what's going on. And to say, like, I need him to be accurate, I need to know Trump's going to get arrested Wednesday morning, 9 a.m., this is going to happen. There's so many variables in that it's not really possible, I think, for anybody at this point to come out. You know, I watch a lot of our friend here, Tarot by Janine, right? So she's really good at bringing a lot of the information true, but again, not accurate, not 100%. But at the time of the reading, you know, it's as good as it's going to get, and we never know. And we just got to watch as it plays out. My feeling has always been, since the beginning of the pandemic, we get up in the morning, we look at the feeds, and we make a decision on how we're going to run the day based on the information that's come in. And I know it sounds horrible. People want to know, they want security. They want to know the next 6 months, what's going to happen. We've just not been able to do that. We can't plan that far ahead. So it literally is, at this stage of the game, I think, a day by day, challenge for us, and to remain flexible. I mean, today, Scott and Joe and I were on the phone, and we were back and forth, because so much was popping all of a sudden. And Kevin, you have your situation that kind of caused, some more of that to happen. And, you know, we're just dealing with it and rolling with it as it goes, and trying to figure out, okay, where do I put my foot next? What's the next step? What's the next phase? What's the next move I need to make to be able to move forward?
Well, and that's, Robert, that's why I love having you, and you're invited, and you're an excellent addition to this, because you always wrap it up very nice. This is war. It's fluid. Yeah. It changes day by day. Timelines change. We make a move. They make a move. Sounds like Juan O Savin. This is what we've been told. But so far we got three yeses. How about you, Winifred? Are you a Juan O Savin fan? You think it's a complete psyop?
I don't think it's a complete psyop. I think Juan was incredibly impressive in his willingness to serve the people and continue to serve the people. I'm telling you, his evenness in what he was doing was really admirable. And he just was very clear and very patient and very knowing. He was not kerfluffled. He was absolutely dead center into what he was doing. His faith is unshakable. His intel is fluid, because, it's based on a lot of different moving pieces and parts at all times. And that was given to us as very pointed closure. He gave us a lot of information about many different topics, what to expect in the years to come, what to expect in the next 10 months, what to expect in the next year and a half, how long this would go, what we need to do. But what was most admirable is his willingness to be so open and clear to everyone and encourage them to be prepared for what's coming, at the same time to be ready to serve your nation. And his whole position is a very dedicated Republican Party, and to have people go out and jump in to vote, you know, to really get that going. And so he just sees, he's been at this for a long time, and he admitted that, you know, it's 50 years of his life he's dedicated to this, and this is a culmination point for his mission and what he's doing. And so going back to the Majestic 12, I'm familiar with that, and I think Space Force has a lot to do with that. I think there's quite a bit going on and all these different things. In our next journey, we'll be talking about portals and what happens off Earth too. So there's a turning point here that's about to take place, and it's very important for people. So I'm a fan of people that are true to their heart and soul and conviction and don't harm others. That's where I stand. And if people prove that to me over time, then I have a lot of respect for that. I don't have respect for a man and a woman. I have respect for a soul, and a soul that's dedicated to Spirit and God. That's where I stand. So that's what I want to be.
Another great add too. And again, the spiritual piece I think is very, very important, and we never talk about that, but Juan definitely has the spiritual piece along with the patriotism and the work ethic that makes us all look absolutely foolish. So I think that just about everybody, you guys are the last two. I know how it's going to go already, but let's weigh in. What do you think, Joe and Scott? What do you think of Juan O Savin overall? Good guy, bad guy? You still going to trust him, but watch him? What's your opinion?
Well, I've learned so much from him, just about, you know, what the obelisks represent. I think, and I might get some of the terminology wrong, but this story, is it Balazar? Is that where the hand appears, a hand of God appears out of the sky and writes in an ancient language, and then an interpreter had to come, and it's been amazing. I almost everything about Juan I resonate with. I know that there's some the intel, and you know, all of us thought, I believe, I know most of us thought that this was going to wrap up a couple years ago. But I think the way that this has played out, it's really been about testing us and as individuals and our faith and bringing out the best of us. I mean, I started off in the background and, you know, sending, you know, Nicholas Vignamin a few guests and just seeing, like, is Nicholas going to be okay? You know, he's really putting himself out there. And you do wonder, you know, I lost my dad 1.5 years ago. And right now my responsibility is my mom and making sure she didn't get the inoculation. All right. So we've got past that. I had a cousin admit today that she is done with her jabs and she's starting to see things, and she's very on the other side. And so then I started, you know, my local podcast in Washington State called The Reflection Pool. And, you know, I'll admit it was a little odd for a little bit, because there was an officer named Robert LeMay, and I interviewed him and I asked him about, you know, what's going on, if he had any intel into the trafficking of children in Washington State specifically. And the reason that he made national news is because he refused the jab. And he said, basically, Jay Inslee can go kiss my ass. Well, I interviewed him and he said, you know, you need to be really careful with this information. And I thought, well, I'll try and be, but, you know, I asked him a question and he answered it. Well, it freaked me out because 6 weeks later he was dead. And I didn't know if it was specifically from anything that he said on the interview. I know that he had nothing to do with hospitals, but somehow, maybe working undercover one night, because he was doing some undercover work as an officer, that maybe something happened to him. He ends up in the hospital and then he dies of COVID. Well, what he really died of was remdesivir and being put on a ventilator. So I stepped back again a little bit. I took down some videos. I was a little freaked out. And then over time this summer, Scott and I started TruthStream, which is, you know, more of this type of stuff, because I wasn't ready to do this by myself. And I thought there was, you know, there's a lot of truthers out there. And so I kept mine really local. So I will say that, you know, we got to be at an event where Juan was, and he was there to support us, and we all met each other, and we're all better for it. And I think that we all need each other, and people need to hear this, and they need to hear us kind of navigate this as we go through it, because we don't know. We're trying to figure this shit out ourselves. So I applaud what he's doing, and I believe that over time, some of the things that he said that's disinformation, we may be privy to why he had to say that. So that's in a nutshell, that's what I think.
Yeah,
I think time will tell. Before Scott jumps in there again, that's a great analogy and a wrap up for this, because I think nobody knows, and this isn't easy. Anybody watching out here who thinks this easy, we get bombarded with all sorts of information, and there's misinformation from both sides. It's a war. So that's necessary too, right? I do think time will tell and we'll get through it. And Scott, the last man standing, not to interrupt you, buddy, what do you think of Juan O Savin, and what's your conclusion here?
Well, I think the story of the flyover really did lend a lot of credibility, and I heard it from a lot of people that I trust and care about. We get a lot of tidbits from Juan, and it usually starts out with a story about his neighbor that collected soup cans and put them on a shelf, and sometimes it was tomato soup, and occasionally it was mushroom soup, and he was really a big fan of the minestrone, but he kept the soup on a shelf, and and he'll go on for another 20 minutes, and then it's like, so where do you keep your soup? And you see what I'm getting at here, and you're like, what did I just hear? And he's very articulate. He does have great command of the information, but sometimes it's a little long in the tooth, and we're all pretty fast paced. We're paying attention to 18 different feeds at the same time. And so, I think we all have a lot of frustration, especially when we hear Donald Trump's going to be arrested tomorrow, and then it doesn't happen. But then again, we're kind of used to this, because we hear things like this all the time that don't happen or that do happen. And it's a lesson in discernment, with all the different inputs, all the different factors that are coming together right now. I think it would be impossible to make these calls and not have them change overnight. This thing's kinetic. It's there's so many moving parts and pieces, and so I really don't know what to think. I can tell you I'm very frustrated, and I can tell you that I have a certain amount of admiration for the book and for the man. But I'm definitely frustrated.
We're watching him. We're on the fence, and I love that answer and the fact that you're brave enough to put it down there. And again, I'm going to say we ended up, our conclusion here is 5.5, right? And I'll tell everybody that I'm on the pro Juan O Savin, but I'm watching him too, just like I'm watching Donald Trump. I love Donald Trump. I love his policies, what he did for he's either a time traveling, he's going to go down in the history as the best president that ever existed, or he's the Antichrist. I say that and people don't like me too. And when I say that, it's because we're watching, right? Question authority, everybody. My mom told me that. And I think that's a great first ending. Sorry for the delays and interference. And we're going to get better at this. Again, to tell all the viewers, we just literally threw this together, a week ago, guys. Yeah. I said, let's do this. And if I'm going to do it, I get to hijack your show. And these guys were nice enough to let me do that. So thank you, Scott and Joe and Robert. We couldn't do this without you. And we plan on doing this hopefully every week. We're going to be the constant 4. And thank you again, Winifred and Brad, for joining us. You were our Juan O Savin specialist today, and I think you did a great job. I hope Juan sees this, and I hope he's not mad. I do think I was being tested. I had to go through a lot of hoops to get to Orlando, and we'll end. When I got down there, one of these very important people, Juan said, this is the guy, we want to give him the rounds. And the guy said, oh, let me get your picture. And Juan instantly just stood up, put his arm around me, and he took a normal picture. Right now, what I saw was, we're going to check this guy out. And they took my picture for background screening. At least that's in my own retarded mind, right? My own mental thing that I'm going through. Well, I don't know either. And that's the important thing with this. This is Kevin on. This is opinion. This is our best guess based on each other and experience. So thanks everybody for tuning in, and hopefully we'll see you next Tuesday at 9 o'clock. We're going to make this regular, right, guys? Thanks for joining me. Everybody say goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everybody. I'm
That's
on
9
for-
o'clock Eastern, 6 p.m. West Coast.
Yes.
There we go. Thanks.
We are
clarification.
indeed on the West Coast here.